Hi, Dime Divas and Dime Daddies. This is Rachel the Dime Diva coming to you with another episode of Dime Life. And we are back with my confessions. A little Usher shout out. We are back for volume 3 of Confessions of a Former Pick Me. So the Pick Me Whisperer is back. And I love y'all for the fact that you are nosy just like me, because Confessions of a Former Pick Me is my most viewed series of all time. And I'm going to keep giving the people more of what they want. Clearly, y'all want me to tell on myself and let y'all know what I have been going through on these relationship streets. As y'all are probably aware if you've watched my previous content, I've been out here dating and in relationships since I was 15 years old. So I have over 20 years of experience in this game, and I have a lot of interesting tidbits to share with y'all. So if we want to take this from volume 3 to volume 100, then let's do it. I'm down for it if y'all are down for it. Okay, so today's topic. Today, we're going to be discussing the topic of limerence. And we're going to do that in tandem with talking about pop culture topics, which is something that we do on Confessions of a Former Pick Me. So I will be addressing my own personal story of a 18-year limerent episode, which also spanned during my marriage. And a example from the show on Netflix entitled Love is Blind. We'll be using a couple named Devontae and Brittany as an example of what limerence can look like on the silver screen. Okay, so limerence. I did some research today just to ensure that I had the proper definitions to provide y'all with of what limerence is. So, according to Psychology Today, and also according to articles by psychological researcher Dorothy Tennov, limerence is, quote, a state of involuntary obsession with another person. So limerence is unique and it's different from just a regular crush or being in love because it's based on uncertainty. So the object of desire, who's also called the limerent object, is not giving you full signals on whether they care about you the same way that you care about them. The uncertainty of that desire is what makes the limerence so strong. In truth, limerence is the desire to be desired. It's not really the desire for the other person. It's the desire for the other person to desire you. And it's almost always one-sided. So usually the person in limerence is having that obsession with their limerent object, but the limerent object does not have the same obsession with them. In my scenario, I actually found out that my limerent object was also limerent for me the whole time too. We were in limerence with each other, and the spell was broken once we actually got together briefly, romantically, and got to see like, oh, this other person is just a regular person. I was kind of bigging them up in my mind for no reason. Mind you, let me be clear. The person I was talking about in the last episode of the Confessions of a Former Pick Me under volume 2, this is a different person in volume 3. This is not the same guy. So this is a completely different situation that I'm talking about in this situation. Okay, so as I describe what limerence feels like, I'm going to first introduce the cast of characters that we'll be using for examples during this episode. So the cast of characters is, of course, me. It's also a longtime love interest of mine who was my limerent object, um, who we will nickname Mr. Nonchalant because that is his nickname for me. And then also there's two additional people that we'll be using as an example today. The first person is Devonte from this season of Love is Blind. This season of Love is Blind was based in Ohio. Devonte is a mixed race man. He is raised by a white mother and had an absentee black father. And he seemingly had some racial issues in terms of his own identity as a what we would consider to be usually in America a black man. However, he did not necessarily see himself in that same way. Devonte, based on news articles and things that have come out after the season of Love is Blind, seems to have some integrity issues. He seems to have some difficulties with being faithful in relationships. And he also seems to be somebody who's not really in touch with himself, but is pretty avoidant and has a hard time expressing himself honestly. He's expressed before wanting to go into a quote unquote nothing box, where he doesn't want to interact with anyone. He also stayed on the show despite the fact that his grandfather had just died during filming. So again, these things just kind of all indicate a cutoff from his own emotions and being present within his body. Brittany. Okay, Brittany is a gorgeous young lady who was paired with Devonte. They were engaged on the show Love is Blind. And Brittany came off very pick-me on this season. She had already purchased a wedding dress before even going on Love is Blind. She was very adamant about the fact that she wanted to be a wife. She wanted a man to bring home. She wanted somebody to be with her and to do life with. And it seemingly gave that she didn't care who that man was. As long as he was ready and willing with his suit, she was going to be getting married. So being somebody that was seemingly male-centered, somebody who seemingly was obsessed with the idea of marriage, she was a pretty good candidate to be victim to limerence because it involves putting on rose-colored glasses when you look at your partner and not really seeing them for who they authentically are. And that's easy to do when you're so fixated on an end goal. So a couple interesting things about Devonte and Brittany's relationship. First, Brittany is also mixed race, Black and Latina, and she is a browner skin Latina. So Devonte has a history of dating only white women, and he seemed to be less than pleased when he realized that Brittany was of mixed race. I would consider her to be a Black woman. I believe she would consider herself to be maybe Afro-Latina. Regardless, Devonte was not really checking for her throughout the whole season and was making that relatively clear through his behavior. Okay, so let's jump into using my own situation with Mr. Nonchalant and the situation between Devonte and Brittany as an example of what limerence can look like in a real life. All right, so what does limerence feel like? From experience, I can tell you it feels like an obsession. You are thinking about your limerent object constantly. And a big part of the obsession and the rumination and the overthinking is analyzing in detail all of your interactions and behaviors with them to determine, is this a sign that they like me? Are they in love with me? What's going on with him? What's going on with her? How is this going to work out? Are we ever actually going to be together? It also involves an irrationally positive evaluation of your limerent object's attributes. So this is exactly what I was talking about with Brittany and Devonte. when you have limerence, you don't actually see a real person in front of you. You see your limerent object through these rose colored glasses, these obsessive glasses where you don't even think that they have any flaws. You think that it's this perfect person that's sitting there in front of you. They're not even like a real person. Um, and because of that, you actually don't really care about the person. You don't really care about their well being. You really just care to know, do they care about me? Are they thinking about me? And finally, limerence comes with the highs and lows. So there's a high and an ecstasy when you feel that your limerent object is reciprocating interest in you. And there's a low or agony when you don't have access to your limerent object, or if your interactions make you feel like the person doesn't care. All right. So let me give you some examples from my own life and from Love is Blind on what this can look like in the flesh. So obsessive thinking over the limerent object and analyzing their behavior. So for me and Mr. Nonchalant, our story began when I was around 16 to 17 years old. So we actually did have a dating relationship. We were boyfriend and girlfriend for about a year. And I broke off the relationship when I went to college and he was still in high school. So what happened was, after breaking off the relationship, I still had a lot of feelings for him and I still was interested in him. But because I had broken off the relationship and I just knew that the match was not right, it just wasn't it wasn't a proper match in terms of what we wanted out of life, because I wanted to get married early. And to this day, Mr. Nonchalant still has never been married. But because of that, I felt that I needed to still stay strong on not being in a relationship, despite the fact that I was still in love with him. So what happened was that desire and that me suppressing my own emotions and kind of forcing myself to leave the relationship before I was ready, that led to me developing limerence. And the limerence lasted until I was probably 33. So 18 years. Which is crazy to think about, but this is the reality of my life. I'm just being honest with you guys. This really happened to me. And now I'm speaking about it like 4 years later. And it's so wild that this was real, but it really was real. Okay, so the obsessional thinking about the limerent object and analyzing behavior. So we kept in touch all through the years, despite the fact that we were broken up. We had a quote unquote friendship with each other for years. And we would still see each other and spend time together platonically, maybe like a couple times a year. And we would text and interact with each other on social media, as well as just, talking directly on the phone. So the obsessional thinking would come in many, many forms. So for example, during college, I would be so distraught trying to not be stressing out about the fact that I hadn't heard from him in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. I would be like, oh my God, did he forget about me? What happened? Does he still care? Oh, did he get a girlfriend? It was so intense and extreme for me that I actually changed my number in college because I wanted to get out of the high and low. So it was like I wanted him to not have my number. That way I would almost starve myself of the contact. Where like if he couldn't get in contact with me, then I couldn't feel distraught that he wasn't reaching out. If you can think about the logic that way. It was twisted logic, but in reality I was like, if you can't get in touch with me, then you can't hurt my feelings by not getting in touch with me. Okay? But the limerence is so strong and so crazy, you guys, that even though I changed my number, I still ended up finding his number and reaching back out to him like shortly after college. That's how crazy it was. I was like, I I can't get him out of my mind. I still want to know, is he in love with me? Does he care about me? Am I desired by him? Now, one of the things about limerence is that it's common for the limerent partner to conceal their feelings about the object of their limerence out of various reasons, out of pride, out of embarrassment, but also out of wanting the limerent object to like almost pursue them. For me, it was like I almost wanted him to pursue me, to show me and prove to me that he cared. Mind you, I'm treating this man so hot and cold to the point that, like, imagine you have somebody that you think is a friend and you guys are in touch regularly and talking, and then out of nowhere they change their number on you and don't say anything. Sometimes I would go years at a time without any contact because I was removing his ability to contact me. But it was really just because of the highs and lows of the experience of being like, does he love me or not? Does he care about me or not? Now, again, remember that when you have this limerent object, you don't actually care about them as a person. So I would keep tabs to a point on like how he was doing, how was his family, what was going on with him. But like we never had deep conversations about life or about, emotions or about plans for the future. If we were checking in with each other, it was really just to make sure we both still had access to each other. Mind you, I would find out later that he also had limerence towards me, or at least it seemed very much like he did. And part of the Mr. Nonchalance, in my opinion, and you guys can formulate your opinion based on what y'all hear in the story, it seemed like he was also concealing his emotions because he wanted to see how I felt about him. So both of us really just wanted to be desired by each other, but we didn't really want the other person. We just wanted their desire. Okay, so in Devontae and Brittany's situation, oh gosh, you guys, it was really bad. So what happened in the beginning of the relationship was Devontae started showing signs really early that he wasn't into Brittany. But somebody who's experiencing limerence, they're not living in reality. So when you talk about the longing for reciprocation and the obsession with being chosen, Brittany didn't actually seem to care that much about Devontae, such as encouraging him like, hey, you should probably go home. Your grandfather just died. Or you seem to really not be emotionally able to handle being at this experiment. Let me bow out. Instead, she would go towards him, cajole him, nag him, try to get him to give her that feeling of reassurance, because in reality, I don't think she didn't know Devontae, first of all. So she really can't have cared about him that much. But it didn't come off that she really cared about Devontae as much as she cared about getting married and as much as she cared about having reciprocation from him. So for example, she was always really looking into his behaviors. I always have to initiate saying I love you. Brittany would say that to Devontae. I always have to reach out and touch you first if we're going to have physical affection. I always have to be the one to initiate us hanging out and spending time together outside of filming. But in reality, those things can all be a limerence experience of trying to kind of pull that desire out of the other person. Because if you really think about it, if a person is making it clear that they don't want to be around you and don't want to spend time with you, why are you pursuing them? Why would you want to go after somebody who's making it clear that being around you is draining for them and not enjoyable? Well, in the context of limerence, it makes sense because in reality, Brittany was seeking out the feeling of Devontae desiring her. So she's seeing, is there anything I can do to make that happen? And Devontae's uncertainty, his unwillingness to be overt and clear about his feelings for Brittany because he's avoidant. He was masking how he really felt, the fact that he wanted out. It created an uncertain situation that made Brittany want to chase. Now, this is also a really good example of the irrationally positive evaluation of the limerent other's attributes. So the way that Brittany would talk about Devante when she introduced him to her family, even when they were breaking up before the wedding episode of the Love is Blind season, the way that she was talking about him, I was like, who is this man that you're describing? Because it's not Devante. Devante, I'm sorry, he's nothing to write home about. He's not that handsome. He's not that nice. He's kind of a bump on the log and boring. So when she would be describing him in these glowing terms and like, this is the man that I'm going to marry, this is the future husband, this is the father of my children, we're going to have these beautiful babies, it was like she was describing somebody who none of us could see except for her. But I can say with humility that was also my situation with my limerent object. And I believe, based on my experience, that was his perception of me. We did not see each other as real people. We saw each other as these almost like fantasy objects where I think we both knew, because of our lack of compatibility, that the relationship was never going to be a possibility. But because of that, we were almost able to pedestalize each other so that we didn't see the humanity in each other. And the interactions that we had were very surface level. And I think on both of our parts, that was a subconscious coping mechanism and protection mechanism, because had we really gone deep and had these type of heart-to-hearts and conversations with each other, I think we would have realized like, oh, this is just a regular man. This is just a regular woman. There's nothing about this person that would make them worthy to be obsessed over. And I realized that once I went through the final stage of limerence with Mr. Nonchalant, which we'll talk about in the next section. But I will say I did the same thing with him. When I would think of him, I would never be able to perceive any flaws. I was like, man, handsome, has a good job, makes good money, nice person, comes from a good family. I couldn't see all the flaws and issues that I can see now that I'm over the limerent episode. Number one being the nonchalance factor. That in itself is a red flag and an issue. But I couldn't see any flaws when I would think about him. And it would cause me to be almost, it felt like a fever of need. It was like there was an obsessive need within me to be like, I need to see if he's still thinking about me. I need to see if he still loves me. I need to see if he's still interested in me. And so I would go periods of cutting off contact, like I shared earlier, but I would always end up reinitiating contact because there would be this obsessive desire to check, like, do I still have access? And does he still care? And it would getting a text from him or getting a DM or getting a phone call, even sometimes getting a story view would create this wave of endorphins and adrenaline throughout my body. It was like taking a drug. And so those highs were so high. But like I shared earlier, the lows were also low. So if I posted a story that I really wanted him to see and he never viewed the story, it would be crushing to my spirit. If if a special occasion passed and I didn't hear from him, well, that never happened. But I was always kind of like around my birthday, I would want to block. I would want to block him or want to hide my story or want to um, mute posts or whatever so that it wouldn't hurt if he didn't reach out on like a birthday or a major holiday or something that was I felt was kind of like a catalyst for contact. um and it really caused me a lot of distress if I didn't hear for an extended period of time from him, even just like reaching out to say hello, or having some type of contact. Mind you, during these years, he had had girlfriends, I had had boyfriends, I had been married. But that's the thing. It wasn't emotional cheating, in my opinion, because there was never any potential of a relationship, and we were never actually intimate mentally or physically. And so it was all a fantasy. I do want to clarify though, during my marriage was one of the block periods. So during that 6-year marriage that I had, the Mr. Nonchalant was blocked from everything. So let's talk about the phases of limerence, and we will discuss how those looked for Brittany and Devontae and how they looked for me and Mr. Nonchalant, so you could see, could you possibly be experiencing limerence? What does it look like? And how to actually get out of it. So the first stage is infatuation. You recognize the limerent other and their positive qualities. So for me, the limerence began after our breakup, when we were teenagers, because at that point, before that, I had him, right? We were in a official relationship, so there was no uncertainty. We want each other, we love each other, we are desirous of each other. But after the breakup, there was a schism there where it was not certain anymore. Would we want to be together? Will we ever get back together? Is there any hope for a relationship in the future? Do you see hope for the relationship? Do I see hope for the relationship? And so that leads to stage 2, which is crystallization. That's when the obsessive, anxious, and ecstatic level of intensity comes into play. So my poor nervous system, I dealt with that for 18 years in waves, right? It wasn't always hot and heavy in terms of the limerent feelings, because a lot of the time we would, like I said, we would go extended time with no contact, where I would like break his ability to get in touch with me, because I knew like this is just too much. Like I'm overwhelmed. But I think it also is kind of like an addiction where you don't necessarily want to be cured. Because when I tell y'all, if you've experienced limerence, the highs feel so good. Like even now when I'm talking to men, when I'm texting with men, when I'm in the talking stage with somebody, it feels really good to get a text from a man that you like. And it feels really good to see his name pop up on your screen and to see that FaceTime message come in. It feels good. But nothing beats the high of when your limerent object gives you the inkling that you're desired by them. It literally feels like I've never been on any type of drugs other than I've taken legal weed. That's legal in California. But I would imagine that is how drugs feel like, because it literally doesn't matter how bad your day is going, how stressed out you are, how annoyed you are, how tired you are. If you get that input that you're looking for from your limerent object, it's like the entire world is just rainbows, butterflies, like, yes, I finally got, what I'm wanting. And so that's what makes you come back for more. So that's the tough part, because it really does feel like ecstasy. I've never taken ecstasy, but it feels like an ecstatic feeling when you are in that crystallization phase and you are getting input from your limerent object. Now, the third stage is deterioration. For this phase, the limerence wears off due to seeing the real person behind the irrationally positive interpretation. So this is what happened with me and Mr. Nonchalant. They say this, it's like the phrase never meet your heroes. We actually had after my divorce, we actually had an experience where we truly got to talk about the past. I think I was at the point in my journey where I was not as prideful anymore. So I was willing to kind of just put my cards on the table and be like, look, this is what it's been for me. This is what it is. Like, I apologize for all the back and forth over the years. I apologize that, I've cut you off and reached back out, all of these times, and that I didn't even really consider him as a person as I should. And it was during that conversation that he also let me know, basically, he had been pedestalizing me for all of these years. And it was almost like us reconnecting was like a dream state for him. Like, he didn't even feel like it was real to be sitting there having this conversation with me, because I was almost like a figment of his imagination, not like a real person. And having that experience, and being able to see him as the real person that he really was, which is also, a great person, but just not at all compatible with me, and also not a perfect person by any means. It broke the limerence for me, because I was able to say, oh, yeah, I for sure have not been in love with this man the whole time. I don't even barely know this man. Right? We've been making contact, but the contact has been so shallow, it's not really getting to know the person. And so after actually spending hours talking and interacting in person, it really allowed me to realize, like, oh, okay, well, I'm getting a sense of who he is as a person. And I was right as a teenager to know that this is not a person for me. This is not a person that I'm compatible with. And I do have a lot of love for him still, but I'm not going to ever be in a romantic relationship with him. And so it's okay for me to let him go. It's okay for me to let the obsession go of trying to psychoanalyze whether or not he cares about me. Also, having the confirmation that he did care about me the whole time, that was also nice. And it was kind of a way to extinguish the limerence, because it took away the uncertainty. The question is answered. Do we have love for each other? Yes. But the high of the uncertainty and the will they, won't they, that part is taken away. That tension is gone. And so now, to this day, if I hear from him, if I see that he's been on my social media, and as the case may be, it does not give me a high like that. It doesn't cause me to be like, oh, now this has completely changed the trajectory of my day, because I've already experienced the deterioration phase. And to be honest, sometimes I do kind of miss the crystallization phase, not because I want to actually be back to being mentally like going through crazy ups and downs and stuff, but because I'm telling you, there's nothing I've experienced to this day that has felt like what happens when your limerent object gives you the feedback and the desire that you're looking for. It literally feels like you are on a high. It's a crazy feeling, but the lows are not worth it. And truly being delusional, like, sure, being delusional could be fun to an extent, but like, no, let's not romanticize the delusion, girl. As I'm speaking to myself, my higher self is chastising me, like, hey, don't be making these people think that it's cute or fun to be in limerence, because there was a period I was laying on my kitchen floor, bawling my eyes out, probably a good year before I reached the deterioration phase. So I was probably maybe like a year after my divorce. And I realized I was not only mourning my divorce, but I was also mourning this limerent object that I had been suppressing all those years of the marriage because I didn't want to admit to myself that I still had a limerent connection to someone because I was a married woman. So I was grieving the marriage, but I was also grieving the fact that, like, oh, the limerence is still there. Damn it. Like, what? And that's when I realized, oh, okay, well, then I have to do something about this. Like, I can't just let this continue to fester and linger. And so the universe provided me with that perfect opportunity to reach out to him, to set up a date, and to be able to pour my heart out to him in a way that allowed me to extinguish the limerence through through addressing it directly. So this is how I feel like it went down for Brittany and Devontae. Stage 1, infatuation. Brittany and Devontae, I believe this stage occurred when Brittany and Devontae went to their honeymoon. It wasn't a honeymoon, their post-engagement vacation, which occurred on this latest season of Love is Blind. Once they got to the vacation, I think that Brittany saw Devontae. She said, okay, well, he's handsome. He's marriage-minded. He wants to marry me. And I think that in her head, she started to get feelings of limerence for him, especially when he started to pull away. She was like, oh no, I can't lose this opportunity. Like, this is my chance. I believe that crystallization happened as he started to pull away more. Once they had that conversation about, oh, I need to be in my nothing box. I don't want to be around you all day, every day, even though we just met and are on a beautiful vacation in a Mexican villa. I don't want to be around you. It's such a romantic location. It's like, if you don't want to be around her, then you don't like her. But I think that push and pull led her to start that obsessing and anxious focus on his behavior, to be like, does he like me? Does he not like me? And so every little thing that he would do during the season, she would be analyzing. Oh, well, he went to go meet my parents. He must care about me. Oh, well, he said I look beautiful. Maybe he does want me. Oh, well, we're continuing on with this experiment and he hasn't left. Maybe that means that he really does care. And those spikes in your endorphins and those spikes in your cortisol that come from feeling desired by your limerent object, they can sometimes make you blind to how horrible it feels when you don't get the feedback you're looking for from them. Now, Brittany's situation, it was pretty extreme. It got to the point that when Devontae sat her down right before the wedding and told her, I can't do this. I'm not ready for this. I don't want to go to the altar with you. I don't want to get married. Brittany was in such a delusion about him that she actually convinced herself that they would still be in a relationship after filming and that they would still eventually get married. If that's not limerence, I don't know what it is, guys. To me, it's a classic limerence response, because when you're with somebody, when you have a limerent object, it doesn't matter what they do. You can still have the fantasy about them because you're not actually seeing them as a real person. So, for example, the fact that I still had limerence towards my limerent object after I had already been married and divorced, after 18 years had passed and we had never gotten back into a relationship, after he had had multiple serious girlfriends, then there was nothing that was going to happen that was going to make me see him as not this perfect object until I was ready to admit the truth to myself through breaking my concealment, right? I had to be the one to say, I'm going to stop concealing my feelings and just be honest, because that's going to allow me to either know that you feel the same way or you don't. I was ready to break the uncertainty. Brittany was not ready to break the uncertainty. She wanted to continue the relationship on and continue with the uncertainty. Devontae was the one to be like, nah, we're not doing this anymore. Now, what I think the deterioration phase for Brittany, and I hope the deterioration phase for Brittany entailed, was when at the Love is Blind reunion, Devontae revealed that he was engaged to a new woman and she was pregnant. Seeing Brittany's dad's face and his reaction to the news of Devontae's engagement and pregnancy, I think showed, and I truly hope this is the case, that the mask was finally coming off. The blinders were finally coming off Brittany and her family, and the mask was finally coming off of Devontae, the mask that they had really put on him. He wasn't even really masking himself. They were masking him. And it showed that he's not a good person. He's not a person that's suitable to be in a relationship. And it makes sense. If you're self-hating, you're going to not be able to love somebody else. So truly, I feel bad for the woman that he's currently in a relationship with, because based on how he showed up on screen, he's not suitable for a relationship at all. Okay, so now that we've gone over the 3 phases of limerence, I will just end with, who does limerence affect? If you're hearing my story and you're like, oh my God, that sounds like me and such, oh no, I think I'm not even in love, I'm in limerence with blank. Just know this information, because you're not alone. Limerence is equally prevalent in men and women, and it appears across all racial and socioeconomic groups. Every group has people that experience limerence. And I would say a lot of people have experienced limerence in their lifetime. Now, especially it's common in people who have anxious attachment styles, which is something that I've talked about before. That's typically going to be a person who in childhood was emotionally neglected, where they had up and down relationships with their parents, but it involved some type of emotional neglect or abandonment where they didn't necessarily feel safe emotionally in their household. And a lot of people come from that type of background. So you're definitely not alone if you're experiencing limerence. I come from that kind of background. Now, the funny thing about this is that limerence usually lasts between 1 and 3 years, because the tension, people can usually only hold the tension for so long until one of them is going to say something, try to pursue, the limerence person experiencing limerence is going to try to pursue the person, they're not going to have the feedback that they want. Something is going to cause the limerence to break. My situation was unique, and I believe it lasted 18 years for 2 reasons. Number 1, because I believe the limerence between me and Mr. Nonchalant was 2 ways. I believe that we had limerence for each other. So I think that we did enough intermittent reinforcement of the fact that we were interested and desired each other that it led to not wanting to give up that connection. It was like there was almost enough reward to make up for the agony of the experience. I think the second thing that made it last that long was the periods of no communication. So I think that subconsciously I was trying to sever the limerent connection by cutting off contact, but instead of just dealing with the emotions and the discomfort and addressing the situation head on, I think that I inadvertently prolonged it because I wasn't allowing the situation to just play out. I think that if I had allowed, let's say like after high school, right? If during college, I had just let myself feel the limerence, feel the pain, say like, I really love you, I want to get back together with you, but I just don't think that we're compatible. I want to get married and you don't. I think it would have been a crossroads where it would have been like, yeah, I love you as well, and I do want to get married. And then we could have had whatever issues that would have shown up from that, right? Because there would have been issues from that. Or like, no, I don't see myself doing that. I think we should just go our separate ways. It would have been a crossroad. But keeping it in this gray area and keeping the tension there and keeping the concealment alive where nobody was really sharing how they really felt for all of those years, I think that is what kept the limerence alive. So here would be my advice if you are experiencing limerence. Number one, give yourself a lot of love, because where limerence comes from usually is having some issues with feeling worthy and wanting to get that validation from an outside source. And the limerent object becomes that outside source because we make them into our mind as this perfect person. So if this perfect person desires me, then I must be worthy. So I think step one is to just give ourselves a lot of love and grace and acceptance that I'm having some issues with my worthiness right now. I need to be kind to myself, and I need to internally build myself up to feel worthy. Number two, I would say if you want to go like the gangster way, stop concealing. Be honest about how you feel to that person and see what their response is. And that kind of breaks the spell. If you don't feel ready to do that, I would say journaling or voice notes or therapy banter with your therapist or a close friend or loved one, being honest about the person that you are limerent towards. So talking to somebody about, hey, I think I kind of have an unhealthy obsession with Mr. Nonchalant. And friends and family that know that person can really give you a perspective like, that person? What? He's blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, you're right. He kind of is blah, blah, blah. And once you're able to start seeing that person as a real person, it takes away some of the giddiness and the high that comes along with feeling like you're getting attention or affection from them. So that's just my advice from somebody who recovered from 18 years in a limerent episode. And let me just say, as a survivor of that, as somebody who's overcome that, it didn't mess my life up. I was still able to live my regular life. So it's not something to necessarily, be super taboo or be afraid of. We all deal with things as we're living our regular, normal, everyday lives. We all deal with stuff going on with us mentally, physically, emotionally. We're never living this life out of a perfect place. We're always wounded healers, right? We're always wounded soldiers. We're not ever going to be, in my belief system, in my opinion, we're not ever going to be fully healed in these earthly bodies. We are going to go to higher and higher levels as we progress. And eventually, in my belief, after this earth realm is where we're going to experience a lot more freedom and, ability to ascend above a lot of what's happening here on earth. Well, thank you for listening to my story. And I hope that hearing my experience with limerence will be helpful to you all out there. And I will talk to y'all in the next episode of Dime Life. Love y'all. Bye.